Okay, I would like to call the meeting to order. Now, would you please join me in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rachel, you ready for roll call?
Councilmember Larson,
Yes.
Councilmember White. Present. Councilmember Dan Hahn,
Present.
Council President Cox. Present. Councilmember Stubble. Present. Councilmember Josh Hahn,
I'm here.
Mayor Richardson.
I'm here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, I need a approval of the agenda as presented, unless somebody has corrections.
So moved. Second.
A motion by Councilwoman White, second by Councilwoman Cox. To approve the agenda as presented, call for the question. Councilman Jehan?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, moving on. The first on our agenda is a public hearing. 23-24 budget amendment. I'm going to open the public hearing at 6:01. Shari, you can introduce the reading.
This is a budget amendment for last year's budget to shore up the accounts, recognizing unrealized income and departments that went over. Did you want me to read all of them now, or?
Yes, please.
Interest is an increase $210,000. We had to move money for community center, $17,000, fire department, $50,000, building inspector, $3,000, emergency management, $4,000, shop, $78,000, Lander Golf Course, $52,000, cemetery, $6,000. Total expenditures, $210,000.
Thank you. Council?
That's evidently then just a wash, right?
Yep.
For the interest income versus the.
We actually are in surplus. These are unaudited numbers. The auditor will be here this month. I show surplus over 700,000. Now 510,000 of that was intended because it was the SLIB additional monies that we didn't mainstream. So that's what will go into our reserve and our equipment maintenance and building maintenance saving reserve accounts for next year.
Any other questions? Council? Public comment from the audience on this topic? And there is none. I'm gonna close the public hearing at 6:02. Very close. Okay, moving on. Item 4, ordinance 2024-8, repealing Lander Municipal Code Title 4 zoning section 1-1-1 through 4-15 through 9 in its entirety and replace it with Title 4 planning and zoning. Going to open the public hearing at 6:03. I'm going to introduce the reading. Regine.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 2024-08. Now therefore be it ordained by the governing body of the city of Lander, Fremont County, Wyoming, that the city of Lander Title 4 zoning code, sections 411 through 415-9 shall be repealed in its entirety and replaced with Title 4 planning and zoning to better serve the housing, zoning, planning, and subdivision needs of the community. Whereas notice of a public hearing and first reading was published in the Lander Journal September 14th and September 21st, 2024. Whereas a copy of the proposed Title IV Planning and Zoning Code is posted on the City of Lander website. Whereas repealing Title IV shall necessarily supersede the following ordinances. Ordinance 1023 from March of 2000. Ordinance 1041 from April of 2001. Ordinance 1093 from April of 2005. Ordinance 1152 from January of 2009. Ordinance 1198 from October of 2015, and Ordinance 1234 from March of 2020. Whereas the following summary changes are being proposed. Number one, expand the horizontal building space on a lot by decreasing setbacks, reducing off-street parking spaces, and eliminating the maximum lot coverage. Number two, expand the vertical building space on a lot by increasing maximum building heights. Number three, increase the housing opportunities by increasing the number of family dwellings and the number of residential structures allowed in some zones. Number four, increasing the housing opportunities by decreasing the minimum lot width in some zones. Number five, maintain the character of the R1 and R2 zones by restricting the number of accessory buildings per lot. Number six, reduce the required individual public notice requirement from 400 feet to 140 feet in compliance with Wyoming state statutes. Number seven, the subdivision rules, including public unit development and development plans, will be moved to a separate document and adopted by resolution of City Council concurrently with Title IV. All design specifications will be removed to a separate document and adopted by resolution of City Council concurrently with Title IV. And lastly, publish a new zoning map to reflect the lot line discrepancies and adopted zoning changes and annexation changes approved through the Planning Commission between 2022 and 2024. That is the summary, and I'm not going to read the next 40 pages, lucky for you guys. I do want you to know that at second reading, a map will be presented that will adjust the boundaries. We do have some discrepancies, and like we mentioned, we've changed some zoning that needs to be fixed. We do have Planning Commission members here in the audience, and during council's deliberation and questions, we can refer questions to the Planning Commission members.
Okay. Moving on, comment from council? Councilman Hahn?
The
Yes.
word densification is not a word that comes out of the mouths of a local citizen that has lived in Lander all of their life, or even people like me that have lived here for almost 50 years. These words come out of the mouths of short timers in Lander that really don't care about the true values, the value of space, open space, large sprawling lots, just like Wyoming, it's open. No, their visions are for cramming as many people in town as they can. Selfish they are. Now, I'm not against growth in Lander, but not their kind of growth, not 45-foot tall buildings in residential areas with virtually no off-street parking. Yes, they could be parking in front of your house. They could be parking everywhere. This proposed new zoning is not sensible for Lander. This will create a whole bunch of new problems for our community, and especially Ward 1, the north side. That's really going to be affected because it's all about land. That's where most of the land is. This Harvard University housing plan, where these zoning ideas come from, they originate in countries like Japan and China, stacking people on top of each other so they can fit into a small footprint. Does this sound familiar? The people that want this new zoning believe our footprint is too small for the amount of people that they want to live here. How crazy is this? These people have tunnel vision. They don't care about what locals think. They don't care about our values. They care about their agenda. This is not what Lander is about. I have supported the planning board for years, but I believe they're totally wrong in this case. This is too extreme, and the zoning we have now should stay. And I've talked to a lot of people that feel the same. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Council, anybody else?
If I can, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, you can.
So, like, since this got brought up, I was kind of doing some research on it. And it did all start in other countries, and a lot of the research was done in other countries. And one of the pros of this is, it's like everything else. It's a money grab, tax revenue, more people, more money. And that's not what this town should be about. So some disadvantages, and this is done on studies in other countries and the US on places that have had this done. Environmental degradation. So we're shooting ourselves in the foot on a lot of this stuff because we're fighting to get all this stuff and then we're gonna, try and pass this, which is not gonna do it. It's not gonna fix the problem. So small cities with high population density can have worse air quality and less green space than low density areas, kind of common sense. Higher mortality rates. Small cities with high population density can have higher mortality rates. Stress levels raise, people are, walking all over each other. Urban heat island effect. It's like living in the concrete jungle, right? Small cities with high population density can be more vulnerable to the urban heat island effect, which is when you take away the green space and add pavement and concrete and everything, it raises the heat. It raises the temperature in the summertime. Traffic congestion. High population density can lead to traffic congestion, making public transportation and walkability more important. So driving your own car could probably, be hindered a little. Cost. High density housing can crowd out affordable housing, driving out longtime residents. So it doesn't lower the cost of the housing by adding more housing, it actually raises it. Reducing outdoor spaces. High density developments may have reduced outdoor spaces like parks and green spaces. So if you like big yards, that'll go away. You can go to the park and hang out with all the people that aren't from here. Psychological health. This is a big one, and this goes with the mortality rate. High density neighborhoods can have more people with stress-related health problems or depression leading to suicide. And this is all things that we've battled in here, in this seat. And it's what they're talking about is going against everything that, we've voted for and voted against. So, I'd like the people out here to realize that it's not all just, we need more housing. We got plenty of housing. The pricing's too high. We've got 91 houses on the market. The prices are too high. People who work here can't afford the houses that are for sale in this town. They're going to people that aren't from here. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm eager to hear the public comment that we have here tonight, and I'm grateful for those who have already written in or attended hearings. It certainly helps inform the decisions that are in front of us today. And I'm thankful also to the Planning Commission for an incredible amount of research and debate and deliberation and really excellent outreach on their part as well, sharing these concepts and ideas that we are going to consider making. I have heard so many stories from workers from a variety of backgrounds and income levels and professions struggling to find housing here. The city hears it from candidates for our jobs in the police department. We hear it from the schools. We hear it from the hospital. It's the #1 issue for the Chamber of Commerce. None of this is a surprise to those of you in the room. Clearly, we might have differences of opinion how to tackle the housing supply issues that we have and the housing affordability issues that we have. Changes to our building code like this will be an improvement. They will not be the only answer, and it's going to be on us to look at a variety of other policies that are within our realm of control and then try to influence those that are a little outside of the realm of control that we have at the city council to really tackle this huge issue. But I would feel that I was not serving the city of Lander if I didn't take seriously the way our building code restricts building supply and the types of options for homeowners in Lander. And so I'm excited to hear the further debate and the feedback that we'll receive. Thanks to those of you who are here and who have already written in support. And thanks to the commission for the ideas. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilwoman White.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you also to all the folks here. Much appreciated to have a good group here. I always love it when the Pledge of Allegiance is robust. So a couple of things I'd love to share with folks. And one is having heard concerns that this was based on plans designed in other countries. I can assure you in the 4 years I've been part of the Planning Commission that there was never a reference to any of these high density things happening elsewhere, or studies from that. Did not come from anything like that. Again, I appreciate folks coming here to share your experiences about housing. Like Councilwoman Stubel, I've heard from many, many different sectors of Lander how this has been a challenge for multiple businesses, and the desire for council to do things that can make a change. So, and in those conversations, I've heard a number of things that are, I think would be helpful for folks to understand. So one concern that's come up previously, continues to come up, and again, I confirmed this morning with our Public Works Director. Lander has a water supply for 10,000 people. So we keep hearing from concerns that Lander can't handle growth because we don't have enough water. That is simply not true. Every day, we sell excess water to people in the broader community. Same thing for our sewer system. Our sewer system can handle up a community of Lander up to 10,000 people. And again, confirmed that having more water coming in and more toilets flushing is not going to degrade our system any more than it's been degraded. Our issue is that it's gone without attention for many decades for that. I've also heard from folks the idea of like, okay, so we need to increase the supply. Let's go outside of Lander. I want to remind folks, this some simple math here. Lincoln Street is a little less than a mile long. The cost for that to redo Lincoln Street from end to end is $7.3 million. Lander has 52 plus miles of road. It's over $400 million to take care of all of Lander's road, sewer, and water. So bear that in mind. And part of why I bring that up is, again, I've heard from folks, other council members have heard from folks, concerns about the need to raise water rates. Yes, there's again, degraded infrastructure as well as simply aging and infrastructure that needs to be replaced. Having a few more taps in Lander, again, we have sufficient water for that. Having more customers paying in helps lower the cost overall for folks. You know, we've also heard from folks you'd like to have more city services provided. One of the ways we can do that, if we can slightly increase, we're not talking about, 15-story, 20-story apartment buildings, but slight increase in the number of folks here. We receive more per capita from sales tax. I think it's about 3,000, Shari, is that correct, annually? Something like that? Yeah, last we talked, it was about 3,000 per
Yeah, I don't
capita.
think it's just for sales tax, so it's not
Right,
3,000.
yeah, for
All taxes.
for
probably.
the various
Yeah.
taxes. That's a way that we can get more money into the city budget to provide the services that folks are asking about. So there's give and take on all of this. Again, I don't want folks to think we're advocating for enormous apartment buildings and things that you might see in the very extremes of it. We're trying to address a very real issue for the community. And while we have no ability to control the sales prices of homes, that's a private property transaction that a willing seller and willing buyer, that's their own business. We don't interfere with that. The way we can affect housing is the demand is there to increase the supply. So thank you, Mayor. I realize I went on for quite a bit there, but I appreciate being able to share that
Anybody
information.
else? Councilman Hahn?
Well, I don't think I've heard anybody, absolutely anybody, from anybody that I've talked to, talk about water. We're not talking about water. And when you say that building these little bit bigger houses are not going to affect anybody, you can go right across the street and get an earful from your neighbors. Because I tell you what, they built a monstrosity right across the street from you, and the neighbors are sick, and nobody got a letter, nobody got any information. In fact, all the people that I've talked to with even across from the school over here, those two triplexes, nobody that I've talked to got a letter. They're not happy. The lady that's right next door bought that place, and now she's selling it. And what that tells me is that we're supposed to build something to get people in here, but we're not supposed to care about the neighbors that live there. And trust me, the people who live across your house, they are not happy at all. And the people over here at the triplexes, they're not happy. if we build a 4-story over here on the north side, maybe a little bit over here on the south side, there's not that much property on the south side, so it's mainly going to affect the north side. We are going to affect people. And how far do you go? I'm not saying we can build the monstrosity that they're building right now that nobody likes. We can build those right now. We don't have to go another story. And this single vehicle per unit is insane. I've been here for this is the end of my 18th year. I've never heard any of the staff there. We've always been concerned with citizens. We have always respected their rights, and we have said, hey, you know what, we're gonna make it right. We're gonna make it right. We just did this not too long ago. And now this albatross lands in front of me, and it sickens me to listen to this stuff. And, you know, I've been hearing it. I keep on hearing it. And to tell you the truth, most of the time I don't hear facts. I mean, hard facts on paper that I can look at. I hear things, but I don't see any factual data on any of this. And when I came to you the last meeting, probably 2-3 meetings, I said that I've been all over the country talking to people, and we have a major problem with short-term rentals and Airbnbs, and everybody all across the country, they're saying this is really screwing everything up. They're screwing the markets. And when I brought that up, I said, we need to put a cap on this. And you told me, no, we can't do that. And I've heard that we can. And I don't understand why we're trying to screw people's lives up in town. And it will. It's not going to affect you. I mean, you live over there, but it's going to affect people. And we don't even want to look at the short-term rentals and the Airbnbs we know they're causing a problem, but we don't look at that. It's like, to me, it's like, we got to have it all. We got to have that. And then we got to cram everybody. We got to have all the spaces. And like I said, if the tall buildings across the way, if anybody wants to see them across from, what are the Gannett Peak?
Yeah.
Over there. And nobody likes them, but to tell you the truth, I mean, we can build those, but we need parking. I mean, we need parking. I mean, we can't have people park. We have a mess already in Lander, and this just, to me, it doesn't make sense to me. And I keep on hearing the same thing, but then, you know, the Airbnbs, we don't want to touch that. And I don't think it's right. I really don't. I do not think it's right. I think the citizens of Lander deserve better than that from everybody, staff and everybody that's working on this. And to go and blanket say, you know what, we're going to do this to get people in here and we don't care what people think is absolutely, it's sickening to me. It really is. And I'm not going to say any more, but I'll tell you what, I like being on the council, but I tell you what, I don't like the direction that we're going. I really don't. I mean, I've lived here 50 years and you know, when people don't care, when people don't care about their neighbors, then that's pretty damn tough. And what they did across from your house, I tell you what, they're sick. If they can move, they've lived here their whole life, and they've lived in that house and they built that monster. And I was going to bring a picture, but I didn't. It's absolutely sickening what they have to, they open their door in this house, this monster's right there. And if that's what you guys think is great, man, I tell you what, you're way, you don't even know the values of this town, the original values. So anyway, I'll
Thank you.
stop talking.
Council, anybody else?
I got something. Okay, you told the tale of two sides there. Yeah, we got good water, we got good sewer. We don't have the infrastructure. You said it yourself. We need our streets repaired. That's what the public wants. We need our water and sewer repaired. That's what the public wants. So when did we start forgetting about the public and making decisions for them instead of listening to them and following what they have to say? We work for them. I shouldn't have to remind you guys that, you know, and if you want to see a little picture of what you guys want to build in town, You can drive down Washakie and Eighth and see what they built down there and see the distance between the apartment and the next door neighbor's yard, which he is now moving because he gets to look 2 stories up at his neighbors instead of seeing the mountains and trees. Now, this is not only a fire hazard. This, when you pack things that close together, and this is coming from somebody who's done this, when you pack houses that close together and you get a good rip roaring fire, it's going to ignite the ones next to it. It's a hazard. It's not safe. People deal with this in the cities all the time. And, you know, I think we're overstepping our boundaries by not listening to the public and making decisions up here off of what we want or what we think, or, hey, this is cool. I think it's a great idea. That's not how this should work. I didn't join the council, you know, 1 3/4 years ago to sit up here and not listen to what the public has to say. And you guys get offended when I bring their voices to you. And you guys get angry with me and fire off and do your stuff. But all I'm doing is what a city council member is supposed to do. I'm relaying the public's message to you and you ignore it. So, you know, I don't understand what this big battle should even be about. Why don't we put it out to the public and get a vote? You want to know what the public wants? Ask them. They'll tell you. Because I'm not going to listen to like, ooh, I've had 10 people come and tell me this. Well, I've had 10 people come and tell me the opposite. You want to hear what they want to know? Then put it out to vote. Let them make decisions for themselves. It's not up to us to decide for everybody in the town. You know, we should listen to them. It's not even an argument.
Okay.
Mayor,
good.
may I?
Yes.
I don't want to get into tit for tat. Speaking for myself, this has been a conversation I've had with the Lander public for 5 years now. I am listening to the Lander public. I have many folks saying we need to make attainable housing more achievable for the residents of Lander, and it very much affects the quality of our future. So I believe I'm doing my due diligence in all that I've done, and I'd like to stand on that.
It sounds good. Let's move on. If your concerns hasn't been shared yet, we're gonna go open it to a public comment. Just real quick, you won't come through the door. The podium has a mic on it. So you'll be able to stand at the podium. Will you state your name and your address, please? I think it's
Is it
on.
on?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Janelle Honlander, and I am in the R3 zone that you people are talking about. I just wanted to start out, Mr. Mayor and Council, I just wanted to start out with this disclaimer. Dan and I have agreed a long time ago to disagree. This also applies to Josh. I am my own person. My opinions this evening are mine and mine alone. If you put it out to a vote to the citizens, put it out to the vote to the people that affects in R3, not R1 and R2, because it doesn't affect you. On the subject of changing the zoning regulations, I'd like to see the documentation, facts, that you have that shows densification will bring the building costs in Lander from $275,000 to, or $275 to $375 per square foot down. That's how you get attainable housing. Regine, the county website shows that you own 1.02 acres of property by the high school. You're among those that are pushing for affordable, now labeled attainable housing. Are you willing to have a variance or the zoning change to build a 45-foot tall, 30 by 100-foot, 6-unit complexes at a reduced rate so people can attain them on your 1.02 acres for young professionals like teachers? Councilwoman White, you're heading up the affordable attaining housing issue. The county website shows that you have 8.85 undeveloped acres on Rosewood Avenue. Are you willing to have the Fremont County planner subdivide your property and sell it at a reduced rate to accommodate people who want to move here? for attainable housing? I assume that since you both haven't done so already, that your answer is no. You don't want that in your backyard or on your property that has a beautiful view of the mountain, and you do have beautiful property, the beautiful view. Well, guess what? Neither do we in our beautiful neighborhood in R3, and we do have beautiful neighborhoods there. I guess it's a case of do as I say, not as I do.
Anybody with new comments they'd like to share? Please state your name and your address. And I would like to see all questions addressed to the council, not to staff, because this is what we're here for.
Good evening, Karen Wetzel, Lander. Well, then I guess I'll take out a couple of questions. I was going to ask, how will things be improved? Because nobody has said that yet. They just say how things are going to, they think that things are going to improve by putting tall housing in. And I believe that the challenge in Lander is going to be how to lower the housing cost. And it's not going to be able to happen if you have $300 a square foot to build. That's what it costs right about now, $300 a square foot to build a new home. Who's going to be able to afford that? The people that own the property, like over off of 7th and Paposia, where those two buildings are going up, that land is owned by somebody, I was told, I haven't verified this, owned by somebody that doesn't live in Lander. But he sold that so that they could build taller buildings there that people don't want. I don't understand why the city insists on telling the citizens that building 45-foot tall townhouses will help the housing crisis when we all know that can't be correct. What it will do is Jackson Lander. That is exactly what they did there, and look at them now. Most of the people who have lived here a long time or even their entire lives, and people like me who moved here to retire, don't want that. We moved here or we live here because it's a small Western town. It has that small Western town feel. We don't want 45-foot tall condominiums or townhouses built where it takes away our view, where it takes away our street parking. I don't have to use street parking, but it takes away parking. It will congest the city to a really bad level. It seems like you're just trying to destroy the city. The arguments are always the same as they were 4 years ago when you tried. I think this was brought before the council, something of this manner 4 years ago. It's the same argument now. Building tall buildings that are going to run $300 or more a square foot that can't be rented by anyone because they're going to charge $22.50 a month to rent them is not a solution. What Lander needs is to have better paying jobs come into town and the cost of housing to go down. I know you don't have any control over that, but the cost of housing needs to go down, especially in rentals. Nobody can afford to rent here, let alone buy a house. And there should be something done about the amount of Airbnbs that are in the town. There's way too many people Airbnb-ing their homes, and that's taking away from the people that need to buy a home. And that's basically all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that knew? Juanita?
I'll try not to go over 3 minutes, and if I do, someone from the floor want to yield me time, I'll accept that, just to be clear. I really did not want to be back here speaking to you tonight. Really and truly, what was it, 3, 4, 5 years ago, we were here, and the city overwhelmingly said, no, we don't want density and we don't want infill. We don't think it's right for the community. And so instead, there was a compromise made. Here we are again. Here we are again. And as my friend William Shakespeare said in the play Macbeth that many of you studied in my classroom, when they killed King Duncan, Lady Macbeth thought it was all done and she'd have the throne to herself and her husband. Didn't work that way. And so she came out and she said, we have merely scotched the snake, not killed it. And I feel that's what we did several years ago. We thought we had come to a compromise that was workable to maintain a nice city. And instead, here we are again, facing the same conclusions. And I'm sorry that the tempers rise, and I'm sorry that emotions rise, because I do believe we all want a nice lander. That's what's driving it. But the vision is totally different than what's driving that. I do not want to see lander infill. I don't want to see these small lots. We are known for being a city of trees and green spaces. You make small lots, and I apologize, I'm nervous tonight. You make small lots, you won't have room for trees. Mr. Sprout may go out of business, I don't know. Anyway, we won't have spaces for trees and green spaces and lawns. We'll have concrete, we'll have parking pads, and we'll have a street full of parked cars and vehicles. Many of our areas already have that, and it's unsightly, it's not safe for children, traffic, or our city workers. I ask you to not proceed with this. I have sympathy for the issues. I have sympathy for the people who can't afford homes. I'm in a business where I see that all the time. There's many issues that create this, many factors, and it's not making smaller lots, making more houses, because our builders can't afford to build. They're nice people. We don't have enough of them, but they can't afford to build and just give their homes away. These small lots will not change the price of housing. Many studies have proven that. It may provide some places for some people to go, but it will not change our prices. Many other factors have to be included in that discussion. And now with the hurricanes, you think the materials are going to come to Lander? We're going to be last on the list again. By creating more homes, these prices will be higher. We see small homes right now being built. The prices are not smaller, lower, I mean. The builders can't give away their product. They have to make a living also. We need to bring in more businesses. We need to do lots of things to bring people in, but they have to be able to make a living here. That affects it more than anything. Yes, out of town investors, out of town buyers, who wouldn't want to live in Lander? Unfortunately, many of those people coming have more money than you and I. That impacts our housing. The VRBOs and all that other stuff are certainly impacting it. And we do need to take a look at that. The infrastructure, all of that does impact what we need to do, but creating small lots, taller buildings, crowding people in is not going to do that. People want to live here. But if you look at Jackson Hole, look what they did, trying to do infill and in-building. And what's the lowest price home in Jackson? Do you folks know? 1.1 million. Didn't do it. People want to live in Lander. I want them to live in Lander. I want them to afford it. I'd love for my kids to come back. Right now, they cannot. But there's many factors, and it's not the size of the lot. I think we're creating a problem that we'll be sorry we have seen come here. I heard Edward Dowd. He spoke about this very thing, and he's the CEO of the Finance Technologies. And he also addressed this. He said this conception that we just need to make smaller buildings, more of them, is not going to address this issue. What we have right now is an influx of investment buyers. And large companies are buying homes. And that's what's driving the price up, not you and I, not mom and dad, not the newlyweds. There's many factors we need to consider before we take this step. Another thing is the interest rates. And right now we're at a crossroads in our economy, folks. We need to kind of take a step back and take a look. What's going to happen here between the floods, the hurricanes, the interest rates? There's a lot of things that could happen in the next 2 years that will change the direction of perhaps the home pricing. And we need to take a look at that and not rush into this right now. We've been here, we talked about it, the city people spoke, and here we are again. In addition, R1 is just a small portion of our community. So by making these changes, we're impacting a pretty large percentage of our city. Take some time, more time. In fact, I'd love for you to table it and put it away, but you may not want to do that. Remember, we're known as a tree city. I brought with me an article from the Realtors magazine. Now, this is from the realtors themselves, and I know you blame many, not all of you. Some of you blame us for the high prices. But you know, if your neighbor sells for 350,000, you're going to ask 352. That's the human nature of it. You know, that's really a factor of it. But in the Realtors magazine, it says, what exactly is an ADU? And that's what the article, but in the middle of the article, I'll be glad to share this also. It says, ADUs may offer the potential to increase housing affordability and inventories. However, it's only a may improve. Even the Realtors organization says they're not sure. We need to take a look at the facts. What I would like for you to do is just really not do this. You've heard the school of unintended consequences. I think that's where we are. We're at a crossroads. And I believe every one of you, if have good intentions, you want the best for Lander. I want the best for Lander, but I think right now, doing this and looking at this as it is, that we will really impact our community and the personality of the community in a way that we will not be happy with. And once it's done, folks. You can't turn back. Thank you.
You.
Coleman Griffith, 980 North First Street. When people come and visit me in Lander, they often make the same observation for the first time, that Lander keeps its money on the south side. This is reflected in our zoning. Nearly all of our single-family high-dollar properties on the south side, where nearly all the low-income R3 is on the north. I don't know that this layout was intentional, but it is noticeable, and the zoning plan before the council here would make this much worse. These changes proposed leave R1 virtually unaltered. There is an outbuilding limit, which is aesthetic and does nothing for housing. And there are slight setback adjustments, but R1 remains single resident, single structure. Allowing slightly larger single structure family residences does nothing to ease housing. Contrast with R2, the supposed low density zone. Changes are dramatic. Setbacks are reduced significantly while the same 2 outbuilding structure applies, but there is now the possibility of up to 2 structures and 4 units per lot. R3 sees a similar sharp increase in population density. I live on an R2 lot that is about 3/4 of an acre on the north side. And the odd result of this plan would be that if I were to add a modest, unobtrusive garden shed to my lot in addition to my garage and chicken coop, that would not be allowed. I could build a 9,000 square foot threeplex in my backyard. I'm not going to, but suffice to say that that would change the character of my neighborhood significantly. That's the root of the problem. These changes are going to apply neighborhood by neighborhood. Lander isn't a video game, and housing capacity can't be adjusted by simply sliding the density slider. In reality, there are neighborhood factors that keep these changes from applying uniformly. As Councilman White pointed out during the open house a few weeks ago, many lots in R2 and R3 simply aren't big enough for these changes to have an effect at all. Further, zoning isn't the only limit on building in town. Many neighborhoods, particularly the newer neighborhoods built concentrated on the south side, were incorporated subject to building covenants. For example, the Gannett Peak Estates subdivision on Sinks Canyon Road, which has the current greatest number of R2 unbuilt lots, has covenants that functionally restrict that subdivision to R1, regardless of the zoning. As far as I can tell, the Planning Commission has not accounted for the effects of covenant restrictions or lot size to determine which neighborhoods and properties would actually be eligible for being impacted by these changes. I would bet that the vast majority of eligibles in areas eligible for density increase are the older, mixed lot size, mixed income neighborhoods on the north side. It is these areas that are going to be targeted for construction, subdivision, and renovation into multiplexes, not the rest of town. I know that there are always going to be more people, and I know that there's never going to be more land. Like many here tonight, I like my space, but I also realize that everybody is entitled to have a home. If Lander thinks that increasing density is the way to provide those homes, and from the sound of it tonight, that isn't a foregone conclusion, then it needs to do it fairly, with the burden and the cost need to be borne equally by all residents. Accessory building restrictions probably ought to be based on lot size rather than an arbitrary zone limit. Density increases should be applied across all zones, not just R2 and R3. And the effects of covenants need to be considered to see exactly what is going to be affected by these zoning changes. Lander is a small town. But concentrating low-income housing in crowded, dense, poor neighborhoods while leaving high-value, low-density neighborhoods untouched is not a good look for any community. In the future, when people come to visit me, I'd like to show them a town where the wealth disparity is less obvious, not more pronounced. Thank you.
I know we're here, but I just think we clapping is just very disrespectful, so.
I'm Kathleen Averill. I live here in Lander. The Planning Commission and the City Council has both received my comments. They're like 2.5 pages long. One's published in the paper. If the mayor or anybody else wants to review that, that one was to the Planning Commission. My main point tonight, because I've said it all before in writing, is if you want to do this and you're feeding us a line that this is going to bring down housing costs, bring the receipts. I want to see the data. I want to see where it's done in comparable towns. I don't want Lander compared to Glenwood Springs, Colorado, Seattle, or other places like that that are not rural America. So if you want to do it, take some time, get us those figures, and then let's do this again, because we're just repeating this thing from 4 years ago. And things haven't changed, including we don't have the facts, the data, and the figures that will show everyone in here that's going to make a sacrifice for increased density that is going to pay off with lower cost housing. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anything new? I think we've heard quite a bit. Judy?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm Judy Legursky. I live up on Buena Vista in R1 on a beautiful large lot. However, that's not what I'm here to speak about. I've looked at these zoning changes, and the first thing that jumps out at me on the zoning map is the fact that RMed is totally contiguous to R1 zones and public lands. Logically, one would then assume that R1 would be most similar to the R1 single-family specs, rather than as radically different as possible, being made almost identical to R5 high-density housing. As a courtesy to the neighbors, I would recommend that setbacks be the same or very similar as those in R1 instead of dramatically different. What we have here is spot zoning, and we all know that's never a good thing and it's never attractive. And of greater concern is the requirement that there appears to be only one off-street parking space per unit. In other words, if a clinic were to be built, all but one parking slots would be on the street or in front of their neighbors' homes. That's not good. And that confuses me because at the time, I think about 15 years ago when we were designing the business park, it was very important at that point to make sure that there was plenty of off-street parking and designated parking for the customers. That was important then. It was done in the business park. Apparently that's not important if we are going to have medical facilities built in RMed, because that's not part of this proposal. Moving on from RMed, I'd like to speak with concern about the proposal to reduce the off-street parking locations per unit. Few housing units are peopled by only one car in this community. Each unit should require 2 parking slots off the street. We all know how difficult it is for the city to clear the streets from winter snows. Having even more cars parked on the streets makes the city's task even more difficult. We've all seen the areas in front of apartments where cars are buried in snow while the city has to plow around them. There's only so much street space, and even the Harvard Group and the HUD Obama era proposals for increased housing density does not limit the amount of snow that falls here in Lander. I do think we need to be practical. The third item I'll speak about this evening is the 5-foot side setback proposal. I don't have any expertise on fire safety, but I think it seems obvious to everyone that 10 feet between structures is minimal, even for our fine fire department to keep fires from spreading. 10 feet between structures isn't very much. I mean, if you were to lay Regine and I down head to head, you might come up with 10 feet. And that's just not very much. It just doesn't seem safe. I appreciate this opportunity, and I hope that we'll all keep in mind that we want to continue to live in our beautiful, green, open community, and that you'll avoid making changes that will permanently alter the character of this community. You know, we went through a similar exercise to this about 4 years ago, I believe. And it was my understanding that the people had spoken strongly against increased housing density in Lander at that time. I would be surprised to see if the citizens have changed their minds since then. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody with new things? Hey, Gina.
My name is Gina Kolovich. I live at 49 South Second Street, which is Zone R2. Thank you, Lander Planning Commission, for the work you have put in to address the affordability of housing in Lander. Thank you for the Lander City Council for listening to all the comments this evening. I have read the proposed Title IV changes to the zoning code, and while I don't agree with all of them, as a whole, I think they are workable solutions to addressing our housing shortage, with one caveat: short-term rentals. We cannot allow denser housing only to have it go to short-term rentals. Have a set number of permits citywide, and only that number will be allowed. Currently permitted short-term rentals should not be grandfathered and should be included in the total number permitted. Finally, this problem isn't going to fix itself, and we as current residents need to have the courage to address it so new younger residents can find and afford housing, and older residents have access to smaller mixed housing type developments that were scuttled by the local area realtors 4 years ago. I would love to have a place to go where I could, be in a mixed housing development, where I don't have to, worry about shoveling my walks. But I have younger people that live in my same development, and I'm not, put off into a retirement community. Anyway, as far as off-street parking goes, regulations for snow removal can and should be addressed. They've been addressed other places. Off-street parking is a, issue in my neighborhood because I have a church that's, has people there probably 4 days a week, and they're parked all around the block and across the street. But, you get used to it. It's part of the environment. It's part of what we, it's part of Lander. It's part of our neighbors. So I would like to just say thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mayor and Council, Nick Hudson. I live at 640 North Fifth, and I'd like to thank the Planning and Zoning Commission for the work that they've put into this, and also the City Council for hearing us as well. A couple of items that I like to talk about. In my opinion, I don't have the facts of them, but I believe that I struggle with the fact that trying to increase the housing in only certain areas is really fair and equal. And I think by limiting the ability to increase the housing in just certain areas of portions of town is not fair. I do believe that if we allow these large structures, and I'm sorry, if you put a sixplex on an extremely small lot, which on the R3 zones, the lots are generally smaller, and we reduce those setbacks, if that is next to your house, it is going to seem like a very, very large building. So I do believe that it will bring property values down, because in the situation that Councilman Hahn mentioned, the person that's next to the house, so that with the townhouse or the threeplex that was built over on Wasky Street, is probably going to not be able to get as much for their house now because of what's next to it. So if we have these buildable lots and we're going to go ahead and reduce the size and we're going to increase the density of them, I think that that's going to actually bring property values down. And I think if we're going to intentionally allow that to happen, it should affect everybody, not just the people that live in R3s or R2s. So that is my opinion on that. I also would echo the fact of having the reduced setbacks and increased density and comes to fire behavior and fire suppression. You will see deflagration between houses if we have one catch on fire. And we don't really want to have a negative effect on our neighbor, but it is possible that this will happen because we are too close. And the temperatures that houses burn and as quickly as they burn now is faster than we've ever seen before. And so the option of trying to get there to protect those properties, specifically the neighbors' properties, is very much reduced. I don't know if I necessarily agree with limiting or completely getting rid of an accessory dwelling unit in an R1 property. Those R1 zone properties are normally larger and they have more space that will go along with them. I believe that there is a possibility that we could solve some housing issues specifically for related family members that have these houses and could possibly put those there. But I do agree with Mr. Griffith that not being able to put in a shed because it's not going to meet it, but also put up a very large housing unit is not fair either. Look at some of the existing housing. If you look in R3 or other portions of the parts of town, I think what will happen is you'll see developers come in and they'll purchase existing R3 buildings and they'll tear them down. And they'll start building sixplexes or larger on each one of these properties with reduced setbacks and decreased densities. And I think that's going to continue to drive property values down in those areas because those properties are not going to be as attractive to sell if you ever go through and try to sell that property again. So again, I do believe it will decrease property values, but I think if that's going to happen, we ought to make that affect everybody instead of just those that live in the R3 neighborhoods. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any more? I'm gonna close the public hearing at 6:55. Yes. I don't see anybody's hand, but is there somebody online? Is it? Yeah. I didn't see any thumbs up, so I'm gonna close the public hearing at 6:55. Hearing's closed. Communication from the floor. Same thing. 3 minutes.
Same thing. Ready? Ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay. Janelle Hahn. While I'm on a roll, which you guys aren't going to appreciate, at the last council meeting, there was a discussion regarding contracted employees. In August, when we were bragging to our relatives visiting from Washington State about what a beautiful community center we had and asked if they would like to see their family stone around the fire pit, I was absolutely embarrassed at the condition of the outside yard. Councilman Larson stated that people are too lazy to work. My question to you, all of you, is when the community center contract was bid out 2 years ago by the mayor's daughter, Shari was to be the supervisor over the contractor to make sure the job was up to the standards of the contract. Lance recently stated that the yard was looking bad because of the shrubs, trees, and foliage were all aging. Sorry, Lance, but the yard was a mess. I posted these pictures on Facebook so that people could see the dirty parking lot, thistle all over the lawn, grass a foot high around the trees, and worst of all, the weeds that had overgrown the memory stones around the fire pit that proves that the yard was not maintained. It had been seriously neglected for 2 years. The bottom line is, you, sir, Mr. Mayor, are over personnel. Now we, the taxpayers, have to pay for additional fees for landscaping, yard work, snow removal on the city-owned building that has been running in the red since day one. I've been told that you, Mr. Mayor, are telling people that we are negative. Bringing out issues that citizens and visitors are complaining about is not being negative. It's being truthful. The citizens deserve to hear the truth. Yes, there are good things going on within the city, picnics, parades, and a lot of projects that have not been completed, but it is far from rainbows and lollipops. Maybe the citizens on Lincoln Street that went without water and sewer last winter can attest to that. And you really don't want me to go any further into other information that I have FOIA'd from the city that the citizens don't know about yet.
Okay, any communication from the floor? Yeah, 3 minutes.
Charles Woolwine at 541 North Third. Non-viable. If a person with medical assistance does not have the ability to survive, they are considered to be non-viable. Again, if a person, even with medical assistance, cannot survive, they are considered to be non-viable. I have had 3 friends who were non-viable. All 3 had terminal diseases, and all 3 knew that even with medical assistance, they were not going to live. With that said, how were Carol, Tom, and Dave treated? They were treated with love, compassion, and respect. All 3, until the day they died, received the greatest medical care available. They were not left on their own to die, nor were they deliberately killed, slaughtered, or butchered. On the other hand, the state of Wyoming currently allows for the deliberate slaughtering, butchering, killing of unborn little girls and boys whose only crime is that they cannot survive without their mother. Sadly, many unborn Wyoming babies are treated the same way as unborn little girls and boys were treated in the Nazi concentration camp, Auschwitz. They are being butchered. Yes, believe it or not, currently in Wyoming, it is legal to slaughter unborn little Wyomingite girls and boys who cannot survive without their moms. Can you believe it? How horrible is that? This is happening in America, where in the Declaration of Independence, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are proclaimed. As a nation, what on earth has happened to us? Unbelievable. I submit that cruel, mean-spirited laws, which were originally conceived and executed out of ignorance and stupidity, should be changed. It is time, for the most part, kind and loving city of Lander to step up to the plate and declare this practice of slaughtering unborn little girls and boys to be evil, wrong, unacceptable. It is time for Lander, which is, for the most part, a compassionate and good city, to lead Wyoming by example, by proclaiming our fair city to be a safe haven for all unborn little girls and boys. At this time, in my capacity as a citizen of Lander, U.S. Army veteran, and certified Wyoming public school teacher, I do hereby declare that the city of Lander should be proclaimed to be a safe haven for all unborn little girls and boys. I hope that someday in the near future, the city of Lander will become enlightened, wake up, and make my suggested proclamation official. Until that time, my citizen-based proclamation will stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Okay, we'll move on. Mayor and council updates. I'll start with you, Councilman Larson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just got one comment that here yesterday, day before yesterday, I had the opportunity to run over to Riverton to Dave's Asphalt. And they had a big, huge pile of reprocessed asphalt pavement. And what it was just old asphalt that come up off of the different street projects that they've done, whatever. And let it dry for a couple years, run it through a crusher, and presto changeo, you know, it's some really, really nice material. I look up there at the city shop building at the airport, and we've got literally thousands of tons of that asphalt that is sitting up there. And I don't know what it costs to get a crusher in and do that, but man, that seems like an easy mark to at least have material rather than going out and buying new gravel and different things like that to be able to use either in alleys or, you know, various places that would be a very viable option at a cheaper price than what new materials would be. And so I guess that I would just like to see something like that at least looked into and see what the probability or possibilities of using some of that stuff would be. You know, we've got more reconstruction that's going to be taking place up at the airport, and so we're going to have a bunch more asphalt and stuff up there. And to me, it just looks like a good way to utilize the materials and also save the city some money.
Go ahead, Lance.
I think that's a great point and a great idea. I think that's what that material is being saved for. And so we're stockpiling it to run it through a crusher as well as down at the sewer lagoons. There's concrete down there and then asphalt piles. The contract that we were looking at proposing was for 50% of the material to be able to go to the contractor potentially versus us actually having to pay for it when we bring in the crusher. So we were looking at a way not to have it go. The other thing that can happen is 20% of recycled pavement can go back into asphalt, and asphalt's getting so expensive. So trying to figure out a way, can we use some of that material to potentially go back in and lower our overall cost as we're looking at paving alternatives. So those are things that are on our plate to look at, but I'm glad that you're noticing them. But that's what that material is designed for, is for the future and to use instead of having to buy materials. You're welcome.
So you got Councilman White.
Thank you, Mayor. Senior Citizen Board met this morning, and they've got a few new board members stepping on as of today, which they're grateful for. They're continuing to do an amazing job in their meal service, and not to mention all the other things they're providing. But again, they just continue to see the use at the senior center increase more and more, not just repeat customers, but new folks coming in and other services they're offering. They teamed up with Palace Pharmacy tomorrow, and 2 weeks from today, they'll be having a vaccine clinic for flu, RSV, et cetera, which is a lovely thing to offer for them. I can't remember when this came up in conversation. We were talking about trying to educate folks about the dog license. And I had my dog at Lander Valley Animal Hospital the other day, and they actually have a really big sign in the lobby stating you need to have a dog license for your dog. So I appreciate them helping to educate folks for that. Another thing, so in terms of air service at Central Wyoming, September was a banner month in terms of number of passengers, highest ever since January of 2002. Downside is the ticket price average was a lot less than had been anticipated. So even though we had a record number of passengers, we still ended up running in a deficit for the year because of the average ticket price overall. So it's always there's so many factors. Many of them are quite dynamic and we can't control them, but that's kind of what we're working with. We're excited that folks are using the service. We're also acutely aware that folks don't want to pay high plane tickets when they need to travel, but there's a downside of those lower plane tickets as well for that. And then lastly, I've been hearing from residents informally as well as in meetings that there's confusion about the ballot ballot language about the optional 0.5% versus the MOU. And the ballot language will not change. It has to be the same. What did change was the memorandum of understanding among the Fremont County government entities. And then along with that, likewise, folks were concerned that citizens didn't have a chance to vote on the revised MOU. The original MOU likewise was not put to the citizens to vote. It was voted on by those, the municipalities and the county. So just want to help folks understand the ballot language will not change.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Hahn,
Nothing, Mayor.
thank you. Councilman Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have just two small things, I think. LIDA is going through some changes, and I would like to have a discussion at our next work session. I'm like, what's that other meeting? Work session to discuss what our role is with LIDA and where we would like, directionally, where we would like them to go and what our role is in that. I think that that would allow a good discussion and opportunity for them to have a little bit better intention to what they're doing for our community.
Sounds good.
I was also able to, just to mention, I've been gone for a considerable amount of time due to some medical issues, and it is lovely to be back in Lander. I've been in the greater suburban area of Denver. And while I was in a very wonderful community and appreciate the medical care that was received, there is nothing like Lander. I mean, it really is a special place. And I think that contrary to popular belief, I know that I'm sure other city council members agree, appreciate when we have people come and voice their concerns. We might not always agree. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's important that we hear what your concerns are, that we're able to make note of those, and really be able to come up with a very good solution for our community. It's a difficult place to sit because there are concerns and there are needs of communities. But it's important that we hear from all citizens. So please don't stop sending emails or calls or whatever the case may be, because we do appreciate it. I know I do. And I know that everybody up here does. Unless you want to talk about the Broncos poorly, then we might not get along. But anyway, it's very nice to be back. I was able to attend the school district meeting. They've had some things that have gone on, but aside from that, I don't have anything else. So thank you, Mayor.
No, thank you. Councilman Stubble.
Thanks, Mayor. Council President Cox, I will say, glad to have you back physically in Lander, but I've been so impressed by your zooming in on all of the meetings. You're juggling a lot, so, but your attendance is not faltered because of it. We're glad to have you here in the room as well. Mayor, for my three liaison positions, I have a few updates, none from the Conservation District or Tree Board. They both meet this week. And so excited to have particularly the second Tree Board meeting on Thursday, and they'll be tackling, as I've said before, their bylaws. I doubt, I'd be surprised if they get to any ordinance review at that second meeting, but stay tuned, we'll get there. The Energy and Environment Task Force always is doing an incredible amount of work, met recently and had a few discussions. The audit is complete on the Public Works building, and Lance Regine, correct me if I'm out of date by a week here, but the last I heard at that meeting was that we haven't heard from the Wyoming Energy Authority yet. But no surprise there. I think we're confident, and yeah, we're not surprised that they haven't been in touch on the results and what they'll fund. But again, feeling confident about that. The group also just discussed a project that we'll get a lot more detail about in coming months and weeks, looking at some savings here at City Hall. So when the time is right and the research is complete, we're excited to have that come forward council when appropriate. Lastly, you can catch me here. I will say, Rochelle, it's probably your update too, but the second round and hopefully final round of interviews for the Parks and Recreation Director will occur on Friday. So fingers crossed that we'll have a good decision coming out of that round of interviews. And Mayor, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Jay Hahn.
Council President Cox, very well spoken on on your comments. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you for showing up to this and just seeing what it's about. And I was super excited to see a lot of people sitting in here for once and listening to your thoughts and beliefs. I really enjoy that. It means a lot to sit up here and look out and see the public versus sitting here and watching the same couple of people that show up to every meeting. It means a lot to me to see you guys here. And regardless your beliefs or thoughts, whether I agree with them or not, it's exciting to see you here. So thank you all very much. On top of that, it's been brought to my attention that, and it's kind of aggravating because it happened to me before I was a council member. I don't think that council members should be questioning or rude to the public, basically asking why they believe what they believe. And it's been happening. It's happened a couple of times, and I think that's disrespectful. I think if people believe something, we shouldn't question what they believe in. We should just run with it, go with it. It's what they believe in. It's their thoughts. It's their minds. We should not question what they think. And I've heard it a couple of times, and I just, I think we should be aware of the way we speak to the public at, the little meetings and stuff that we have besides this. Because it's concerning to me, because that reflects on all of us. And, whether we agree with what they think or not, we should not question them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I hope that none of the council members up here are ever rude to anybody. I just hope that that's not true, but let's mind our P's and Q's. So, but on that, I want to thank you all for coming. And anybody, we'll move on for right now. Let's move on to staff reports. Chief Peters,
I don't have anything tonight unless you have questions.
any questions for Chief Peters? Lance?
Yes, Mayor and Council, just something real quick. Asphalt. We only had one asphalt contractor put in for our general services contract. So we are kind of at their beck and call as far as timing goes. We have some patching that we've had in place for several months now that we're trying to get done and still trying to get done this year. Lincoln Street is one of those areas where we're wanting to get it in better shape, even though we know we're doing complete removal next year to shore up some of these areas that are really, really bad and rough. So just want to give you an update. Baldwin Creek, another one of those. We are opening up some areas in Indian Lookout right now with repairing valves that have lost the metal within them. And we had one break last year and realized that we needed to put in stainless steel hardware before we start losing more. So we're going to shore those up as rest as the rest of the water. The rest of the water line issues that we've had recently. So we're still trying to put things back in place, but look for that to happen over the next few weeks. But we don't have control over when our contractor closes their plant. So I'm going to work on alternative solutions such as the one Councilman Larson brought up, and see if there's ways we can explore on having more adequate access to hot mix in the future, see if we can come up with anything else. That stuff has to come at a certain temperature and be placed at a certain temperature. It's beyond our control other than prepping it and help put it down when it shows up. So just wanted to give you a heads up in case you're getting that question.
Okay. Any questions for Lance? Missy?
Yeah, thank you, Lance. That is a question I've had, both hearing from folks and my own. So you're saying we literally don't have any access to hot mix to do a skim coat on some of the real bad parts of Lincoln, or to even like microfill the potholes? Like,
No,
we got,
we're at the contractors' availability, and they have contracts all over. And some of these contracts that they have are very large roadway contracts. I'll have a discussion with them, Missy, and see if there's ways. We haul with our own trucks, so we don't even mind picking it up at times and bringing it over. But this has been a really tough year to work that out.
Yeah.
And to get materials over here and get them placed. So I'm going to work on that, and I'll report back if I can find alternative solutions, or maybe we need to look at we didn't get other paving contractors who, put in for this, and maybe talking to them again and seeing if, there's at least one other competitor out there, if, why, or what we can come up with, or if this materials idea of using some of our wrap or something else can bring us better availability to get this patching done earlier.
Thank you. That would be awesome. I'm sure everybody knows Lincoln Street's looking sad, and I understand you've been wanting to do this for literally months now. So it's not a lack of intent, it's a lack of materials.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, ditto. It's troubling and a bummer. It's the understatement of the night. Lance, for Lincoln Street, we had, added, that contract's not 2 years, this. The window, I imagine, is closing to see any work done for Lincoln Street this fall, but I just want to double check where we landed in those negotiations.
They've got a lot of materials that we're going to be paying for that are going to be stored for next year. And so we verified that they're here and they have all their water line materials and sewer line materials, but based on the contractor's availability and their schedule, we do not dictate that. So I was hopeful that we would see them starting on with a couple blocks, and really wanted to see that area that was discussed earlier in the meeting, where we had water line issues and potentially depth issues addressed this year. But our original contract was aggressive, and we wanted to see it all done this summer. And that project would have been complete, and nobody bid that job. So we are now, it's a 2-year job, hoping that it all gets done next year.
Great. Well, the risk of being glib, that's also a bummer. Another winter, too bad. Thanks.
Hey, Councilman Hahn.
Lance, have you guys ever worked with cold mix?
No, where are they out of?
Cold mix.
Oh, cold mix. I
Yeah,
think you said
hot
gold
mix and
mix,
cold-
like GOLD. And I was like,
No.
is that something new I haven't heard of?
No, we used to,
Yes, sorry.
we used to use it, with
We
at the
do.
Fate.
We buy a lot of cold mix, and we especially use it in the winter and off season and heat it back up, and we'll place it.
Oh,
So
okay.
we do buy cold mix from 71 every year and have a certain amount around. And we could go to that, but I think we're talking about some of these large skim areas that we're trying to get done in the hot mix areas. But
Yeah.
if worse comes to worse, we'll be putting cold patch in those holes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anybody else then? Regine?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. There is a request for proposals out right now for the water and street improvements on on Bishop Randall, which runs up past the hospital. And with any luck, we'll get some successful bidders, and we'll probably have to have a special meeting at the end of October to award that bid. So we're hoping for a good response on that bid. I just want to let you know that that is currently out and will be bid October 24th. I don't have any other updates unless you have questions for me.
Questions? None? No, thank you. Shari?
I have nothing. The reason why we are bidding that though is because that is ARPA monies. So it is a grant project, fully reimbursable.
Anything for Shari? Done. Adam?
I don't have anything tonight unless somebody has a question for me.
Anybody have questions for Adam? Michelle?
I have nothing that hasn't already been said unless somebody has a question.
Okay. All right, we'll move on. Thank you. Consent agenda, number 8 on our list is the approval of September 10th, 2024 regular minute meetings. Item B, approval of September 24th, 2024 regular minute meetings. Item C, approval of September 24th, 2024 work session minutes and approval of bills and claims. Any discussion on any of those? Can I get a motion to approve?
Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda.
That's second.
I'd second that.
A motion by Councilwoman Stibbles, second by Councilman Larson to approve the consent agenda. And a call for the question, if there is no questions. Councilman Jay Hahn.
Yes.
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 Yes. All right. Moving on to item number 9, old business action item. Approve third reading. Ordinance 2024-7, amending ordinance 23-3 and title 12, section 12-3-3 Parks and Rec potential penalties for the park rule violations. And we've had quite a bit of discussion on that. Is there, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Get a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman Cox.
All right. Pending.
So this is on third reading and final, so any other questions, concerns? None? Councilman Larson?
Yes.
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 Yes. All right, moving on to item 10. Approval of the first reading of ordinance 2024-8, repealing the City of Lander Muni Code Title 4 zoning. This has got 3 readings. There's 2 more after this one. And can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
A motion in a second, a motion by Councilwoman Cox, second by Councilman Larson.
It's white. White. I'm quiet tonight.
Oh, Councilwoman White, my bad. You're not quiet. I'm just not used to being here, so I was giving the credit to somewhere else. So, like I said, this has got 3 readings. This is not a done thing tonight unless it fails. And so I'm gonna call for the question. I think we have plenty of discussion. Do you want to have discussion? Anything for the zoning planning? Does anybody have anything for that you're concerned about, or?
I do have a
Ask
point
it.
of discussion, if that's okay too, after we hear from Zach.
Yeah, right there, Zach. You have a question? Yeah.
I don't have much to present to the city council other than what we've already presented on very much at length. I'd be more than happy to answer any direct questions you have about any particular aspects of what we've proposed to you. But I would just like to speak, basically state generally that we've worked on this for a long time. I understand that there are a lot of folks that have a lot of questions about why we're proposing what we've proposed. And as I've said before, we're more than happy to hear from folks at any of our regular public meetings that have been going on for the last 4 years. And it's somewhat disappointing that folks haven't taken us at that opportunity. But I do support what we've proposed to you. I'd be happy to answer any questions about it. And if you have any good specific changes for us, I'd be happy to take it back to the Planning Commission and discuss it as a group. Thank you.
Yeah, question for him.
I think just by way of a comment too, with the process of the ordinance and that we have an opportunity for 3 readings. I do have some questions that I would like to talk with the Planning Commission about, and some concerns about what our community has control over in addressing housing and versus what we don't. But that is all for a different day and a different conversation and some more research. And the way that I would be voting tonight would adhere to the idea that we have an opportunity to continue to have a discussion, that there are 3 readings, and it is an opportunity to look at some concerns that I have with what's been proposed and come up with maybe some compromise or solution. So, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Hahn.
I have a question. If we scaled it back, is it possible to scale it back to what is over there across the street, 3-story instead of 4-story, and some decent parking? I mean, is that feasible?
I don't see why not. If you have specific corrections that you would like us to consider, I'd be more than happy to take that back to the council for its reconsideration. I can say that what we've presented to you is the result of significant deliberation and compromise between each of the members of the council, or of the Planning Commission. And, but if you do have specific concerns, I know you mentioned earlier that you'd like to see a minimum of 2 spaces per dwelling unit rather than 1. I'm hearing generally from the folks tonight who've spoken, from the public that, there's significant concern about the maximum height in certain zones. And I'd be happy to take that back to the planning commission to redeliberate that between these readings.
I believe that over at Gannett, that's 30 feet? Is that 30 feet or?
The triplexes over on Poposia.
Yes.
I mean, I haven't measured it. If I had to estimate, I would imagine that it's probably slightly over 30 feet. Although if they are limited to 30 feet, then it probably is 30 feet.
Because I tell you what, you can literally, you can be 2 blocks away and see it standing up there. And to think, honestly, to think about a 45-foot building in a residential zone. That's like the Knowles building, that tall, sitting 5 feet away from, I mean, I'm blown away that somebody would even consider that, to tell you the truth. I mean, really, I mean, this is always been a sleepy little town, and, you know, we've got these little, now we're building these little communes on corners, you know, where we have 3 houses, or maybe there's 4 families, or who's to say how many families are on these little lots? I mean, but that is way better than having a Knowles building sitting all the way on the other side, north side, in the middle of north side, you know, and then, I mean, to top that off, to have no parking. I mean, honest to God, I grew up in Southern California, and I mean, this is just, it blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind to think that is okay. I mean, really, I mean, I can't even believe it. I cannot believe it, you know, living here for 50 years and to have somebody bring that here and think that that is the right thing to do is friggin' sick, man. I'm telling you, it's crazy. I would like to, I'm not going to vote for this tonight, but I tell you what, I think we need to, I think we need to make this fit a little bit better to the community, because this is going to affect Northside really. It's really going to. And to tell you the truth, if everybody comes next time, I'm going to have some pictures, and I will show you what some people think is cool. I mean, I will show you that, because I'm going to take the time, and I'm going to bring a bunch of pictures so you can see, because there are people out there that aren't happy, and it's too nonchalant up here, man. I mean, it blows my mind. It really is. It's sickening to even think about that. But to put a 45-foot building 5 foot away from somebody's their house, that's insane. Not in Wyoming. Go to Denver, or go to any other. Anyway, I'm done.
If I might respond directly to that point, I would submit that you ought to go to the south side and see some of the houses that are over there. There are 50-foot structures over on the south side. So just consider that when you're doing your general audit of what is and is not appropriate in these zones. And, you know, I would like to say that I am more than happy to consider any comments from council on how we ought to change after we've been at this for 4 years. And likewise, I'd be happy to hear from anybody in the public who'd like to come to our meetings, who have not come to our meetings, and tell us what their feelings are in that regard. So thank you.
Zach, I'd just like to thank you for all your hard work. You are a volunteer, you're non-paid. You guys have spent hours and hours working on this, and I appreciate that. And now you give an opportunity, council, to go visit with them at their regular council meeting to start getting things changed there, or you think would be good suggestions for them to change. So, like I said, I don't want you to get beat up too bad, but I would want to, you got a lot of nerve coming up here, but I appreciate that, Zach, and all your guys' hard work and your council. Because like I said, these are all volunteers trying to do a good thing for our community. So I do appreciate that. I want to put that in before you get away. So I do appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
You got one?
So, yeah, thank you for all the hard work. I know what it's like to have little ones at home and have to come and, do this stuff. You're taking time away from your family. I appreciate it. That being said, alongside of those 50-foot structures on the south side, what sits next to them? Other 50-foot structures. I know where you're talking about. You're talking on the south side, Third Street, all the fancy houses. And I don't understand why it's a certain area. And it has already been said this evening, it's lower income, small single level houses. You having kids should understand what a yard should mean. And what having people that you don't know or trust in an apartment complex next to your house, which you've lived in for years and years and built to your home. You should understand what that's like. You can't trust everybody. We don't know what's moving into town, I'm sure it's a bunch of beautiful, wonderful people, but with every, say 100 people, there's probably a bad one. I think that if you guys are gonna do rezoning, you ought to keep it to where it's similar to the housing styles that are already in that neighborhood, not put a 50-foot structure or a 45-foot structure next to a single level home. Cause I kind of like sunshine, I see the one on 8th and Amaretti, or 8th and Washakie, excuse me, and it's sickening. And I'm sorry, this hasn't passed yet, but it looks like it's already happening. So, we have these meetings, we hear the public and everything, and they probably have families too and can't make it to your meetings as well as me. I mean, I'm going to football games, I'm going to tumbling, I got all kinds of stuff going on. I don't necessarily have time to come to your meetings and listen to all this stuff, but I read it and I talk to the public, and I think their opinions matter, and we're listening to a small portion right here tonight. But there's more out there. I don't see anybody that I've spoken to about this in this meeting, and they all don't like it, because they've owned their houses for a long time and they don't want a big giant thing next to their house. They want their freedom, they want their space, they want their yard, that's my thoughts. And I do appreciate everything you and all the other planning members have, that you put in a lot of time, and I appreciate that. But you also have to take in consideration the people that live here and have lived here, and people who have just moved here that don't like it, So thank you. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and I believe that we have taken in to pretty significant consideration people's views and people's opinions, even going back as far as the last time similar ordinance changes were heard by the city council. One of the things that we as a group on the planning commission had considered at length and significantly with everything that we did to make modifications or propose modifications in other zones, came back to the fact that 4 years ago, so much of the pushback came back from the folks in R1. And we weren't going to try to make the perfect be the enemy of the good when it comes to making some sort of reasonable accommodations. I totally understand what was said here earlier, that this feels like it's unfairly foisted upon the north side of town. And perhaps that's something that we need to reconsider, but it was something that we took into consideration to try to make some more opportunity for current landowners to have a little more freedom to develop their property as they saw fit to do it. I can understand the concern that folks don't want to have a really tall building next to their house. I get that. There are vehicles to protect some of that space. You can get solar rights easements for your own property if that's something that concerns you, that restricts your neighbor's ability to build on their house. We were using the few levers that we have to try to create some opportunity for people that own their homes here to do a little bit more with them, to add on to them a little bit more, to perhaps create an area for extended family to live when they come to town, or if they wanted to take care of their elderly loved ones in their own community. And so I don't think that every single building here is going to get scraped and built up to 45 feet with a flat roof and an elevator inside and have 10 units in it. I understand people's concerns about what's going on over on Proposia Street with that, with the two triplexes, because it seems out of place right now. And it may not always seem as egregious as it feels when it's newly built. Anyway, we did take a lot of what you've requested us to consider into consideration. I'd be happy to hear more about this, especially with basically what I'm hearing right now from the city council is that the height is a problem. I'm hearing that. I will take that back to the planning commission where we will all make that determination as to whether or not we want to change it. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Is that nice? Go ahead.
No, the one comment, and I asked this question a meeting or two ago, but the one thing that everybody has to remember here, if we vote on this, if we vote this in, then there's nobody's coming back to ask us if it is a done deal, and they will build. All they have to do is come to the city and they can build this. Once we do this, it's over with. There's no going back, and the city council has no control. It's up to the city then, because I asked that. So everybody needs to know that if we vote this thing in 3 meetings from now, or whenever it is, if it goes through, it's a done deal. And like I said before, there's a fine line, and there is a fine line. I know it. Lived out in California. There's a fine line between progress and ruining a town forever. It's a done deal. Once you pull the trigger, and I know there's people that just think I'm absolutely crazy, and it just blows my mind. I don't know where, I don't understand that, but, because I've seen it. But anyway, that's it. If we vote this thing in, it's a done deal. There's no turning back.
Okay. You have something?
Mary, thanks. Yeah, gosh, there's a whole lot here. Thanks, Mr. Mahellum, for your perspectives on that. I mean, I think there's so many ideas we've heard in the feedback tonight. I think it would be interesting to have the commission weigh the possibility of height adjustments and in what different zones, and if we can still achieve, what we're trying to achieve here of some increased supply, frankly, and different types of housing options, if we adjusted height. But I also, when I sit with that fact, it's hard to hear this tonight when we had a lot of comment that was opposed to these changes, but we have had comment that was for it as well. We didn't hear it tonight, but it's in our inboxes. It can be FOIA and public requests. It's been in conversation. So this is a data point of feedback from the community. And as you know, as you've heard in other open hearings too, there are people who are in support. So I think it'd be interesting to hear if we can still achieve some goals we're after with adjustments. And I don't think I'm entirely committed yet to the concept of adjustments, given the fact that we have more debate in front of us. We had feedback that is supportive. I do want to ask a question, Mayor, if I may, and Mr. Malum, you can defer this to possibly Lance might be a better place, so tell me if that's more comfortable. But the fire concerns are, of course, really visceral, right? And powerful to hear from our volunteer fire members and our fire department itself. Can you speak to either of you about what the international code, the code says about fire safety, and these setbacks are being allowed and are considered, I imagine, still safe and within the code? Do you want to address that? Do you want Lance to touch that?
So I'll touch upon what we did as a planning commission to consider that perspective. We did consult with the building department to determine whether or not our proposed changes were consistent with what's required in the International Building Code, which is what we've adopted as a city to govern how buildings are built. And It is consistent. Of course, there's, my understanding, which is limited, is that there's, different materials that one might have to use if they want to build their house that close to another. There's different ways that you couldn't have certain lengths of eaves, for example, if you built right along the 10-foot mark, which is clearly a visceral concern to everybody here. And we did consider, we consulted with the building department. We took their recommendations into account, and as to what those actual specific building codes are, I think I would defer to Lance on that. Thank you.
We have our fire chief and fire marshal in the audience, so before I misspeak, I think we could default to one or the other of those who would be willing to come up and.
Neither of them look super
Well, yeah.
eager. They're fighting right now.
When you have expertise, you've got to default to
Yeah.
it.
And while you're coming up, I'll add a supplementary question here. I'd be curious about the requirements around sprinkler systems in the multifamily units that would be possibly added here.
Again, that's my understanding is that that's governed by the International Building Code, which this city council has adopted as part of its own building code. In my understanding, I'll probably be corrected here, but I think it only applies to buildings with 4 or more dwelling units. Thank you.
You are not going to be corrected. You're exactly right. So the building code applies to buildings when they get over a certain occupant load or a certain occupancy. And usually once you get over this level of a townhouse is when you're going to be covered by the building code. And that's when you're going to have stricter building requirements, specifically involving sprinklers. With a townhouse requirement, they're still allowed to be separated. You can build several of them in progression without having to sprinkle them and actually separate them. So unless they're sprinklered and you actually have some protections built within the home, you'd still have a configuration issue with the 5-foot setback, because you have the ability for the fire to continue to grow even if they're separated. So there's a little bit of a difference there. It would depend honestly at what type of a building was being built.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Oh,
Oh, you got one more question?
Discussion before,
Yeah.
haven't we?
We have.
Yes.
Yeah,
We've
I
had-
mean, that seems like that's something that could be included in this moving forward, that we include sprinklers being required in townhouses, which are a little bit different in construction and ownership, et cetera. That seems like that would be a reasonable amendment to make to this. Along those lines, again, I'll echo deep gratitude to you, Zach, and the rest of the planning commission, knowing how much time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears have gone into these considerations. And also along that, a reminder for all of us, like they were doing this at the behest of us to working on housing is one of our highest priorities. It's the highest level priority for us. It's also on us to be cognizant that they're trying to make changes at our request. And if we're not comfortable with those changes, then I think we owe it to them to provide functional, achievable changes that can move the needle. Lots of comments being made, and gosh, I wish I had a magic wand to increase everybody's wages in Lander. I have no idea how the council could do that. We can't impact who chooses to buy, where they're from, or at what price they choose to do that. There are a number of things in the housing attainability world, and I would encourage all of us to start looking at those and see what are those we would be willing to accommodate in Lander. Because we've all heard the concerns about how we are becoming Jackson in the discrepancy between wages and the price of housing. And if that's something we want to avoid, we tried to do that 4 years ago, and I would say based on the modifications we did make, it didn't move the needle. In fact, we can pretty clearly state that in fact, our housing has only gotten more challenging for us. So what kinds of things can we do? And I think we should be bringing some of those ideas to the Planning Commission.
I think we need, if you have ideas, please get with Zach. And he'll be glad to take them back to his commission as well. So
Here.
I was gonna call for the question, but you have
One
some.
more point of information, if I may.
All right.
Thank you. It's just to stay on the same topic while we have Mr. Hudson here. If we did pair some of these changes with sprinkler requirements for certain types of housing, what would your level of concern be with fire and these changes?
It would definitely be reduced, Mayor and Council, because when you get to a certain point or a certain size of a building, the sprinkler protection is built into the requirements, so that way you can't hurt your neighbor. So that's why when you get to have more people within the building, that's why it ends up falling into the building code as opposed to the residential code. We as a town choose to sprinklers are already required in the residential code, but we as a town, as a body, exempt those out of that requirement. So there are a lot of give and takes that go along with additional sprinklers or sprinkler requirements in facilities. Because we're taking away the ability for a fire to grow, there's a lot of that requirement that ends up going away for rated construction. But you are still allowed to do rated construction depending on what type of a building you're going to build.
Thank you.
If that makes
It's always
any
helpful.
sense.
Yeah, no, I do. Staff want to comment on that too.
Lance? Reggie, whatever.
I just want to let you know that the zoning commission has to stay in their sandbox. And so sprinklering and building materials are not a zoning matter that they can solve. But Title III and the building code would be where those things would be addressed.
Right. Thank you. No, good clarification. And that would be then a council level additional debate, of course. Yeah, it wouldn't be paired with this at all. Thanks, Regina. That's good clarity.
Lance?
And then the multifamily units that we've been discussing tonight do have sprinklers in them. They were required to do so. So it's not across the board, all residential buildings are exempt from sprinklers. There was a small exemption, and we can talk about that more at some point in time with Hunter. But it doesn't apply to everything being built within Lander.
Thank you.
Did you have something else?
Mr. Mayor, I just basically saying, Lance is exactly right. So it's just certain points. Like I said, when it gets to a certain size, when it actually falls under the building code, as Zach said, four apartments or more, then they would automatically be required.
Okay.
But yes, that's exactly right.
Anybody else? Okay, got a motion and a second on the floor. Call for the question. Councilman Larson.
Yes, Mayor, and I'm going to elaborate here just a little bit, just because this has been a really tough hearing to, I shouldn't say tough hearing to listen to, but it's if the words that were brought up tonight were the only thing that we heard, you would be absolutely foolish. You know, if this was the city speaking, you would be absolutely foolish to do anything besides shoot this thing down. But there have been numerous others that are in support of this passing of the new zoning, and I feel like that I've got a responsibility to listen to them also. Like I say, this is one reading of three. I agree with Zach. You know, I don't think that we're going to see these 3- and 4-story buildings just spring up everywhere around town. You know, there's just not the room for them to do it. Could it happen? Is there going to be some of it that's possibly happening? It could. It could. But I've been a part of the liaison for the Chamber of Commerce now for 6 years, and time again, that's the thing that they bring up to me. You know, if we want to support our local businesses, they've got to have housing here. There is, you know, we've talked about affordable housing, we've talked about attainable housing. There is a huge difference there. Attainable housing is having housing available, in my mind, and that's also part of the affordable part of it. You know, a supply and demand, and as a council, we can't regulate the price. Can we do something with the VRBOs? I think so, but there's there's a certain amount of homes that are going to be available out there. And if there's more homes and it starts to become a saturated market, you're going to see the price go down. And that's just a simple law of supply and demand. But right now, I'm going to vote for this.
That's a yes vote.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes. So moves on to the next one. Like I said, this has 3 readings. And we'll get everybody's questions answered, hopefully. All right, moving on to approve resolution 1343, amending the 23-24 FY budget. We talked about that earlier in the public hearing. So guys, we're still in doing business. Zach, we're still doing business. So we can hear you up here, so. Approve resolution item B 1343, amending the budget we talked about. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved?
In a second,
Second.
a motion by Councilman White, second by Councilman Cox. I'm glad you're back. To move on, I'm gonna call for the question. Councilman Jehan?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Item C, approve resolution 1343, creating a job description for the police department corporal. Can I get a motion in a second? We'll have discussion.
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
A motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman Stubble. Chief?
Once again, it's kind of like what we discussed at the work session last time. It's, what this is just a reclassification from one of the sergeant's positions to a corporal. So it is a first line supervisor, it will be a promotion. It's just a difference in title. It's not a new position.
I do have
Questions?
a
Go ahead.
couple of comments. I've been thinking a lot about this and also going back to some minutes that we had when we made decisions with a previous chief and a restructure. I am not in favor of this. I'm a little concerned, here's why. Our police department runs really, really well. It's one of the bright shining things we have in our city. It's something that has been consistent. We keep guys around. We don't have a lot of turnover. And when we do have turnover, it's felt pretty extensively. We have young kids that have stayed for a long time. We've recruited really good new members to our police force. We've hired a captain, that position we created. And that one, that was a good decision. That was a long-term, forward-thinking decision. I am concerned about changing the structure. While I think that there's some good reason behind it, and I think the chief has made a really good point, I really get concerned about changing things midstream. I would like to see a more, for instance, I don't want to go back if we have another chief in a few years and restructure. I like the corporal idea. I know that it comes from other departments. I know other departments use it. I would like to know more about how it affects our budget. I would like to understand, really at a more global view of why we need to change it. I see within the job description, I compared the sergeant description to the corporal position. There's not a lot of difference. There is difference in pay, but we've had people, I would assume, now I've not talked to any of the police officers personally. I wouldn't want to put them in that position anyway, so they won't tell me the truth because they won't go against their leader. That's the culture of our police department, which I respect. But I know that when you're in a small department and you have minimal option or minimal opportunity for promotion, and something is changed in such a way that decreases, although it is a promotion, it's not the same. We did make a decision years ago, one of which I did not agree with, but we had to do it in reference to who our mayor was, and his son was on the police department, and we had to have a layer of protection for that. And that wasn't a good decision for the long term, and it's affecting our current chief. So I wanted to make those points prior to my vote, so you understand where I'm coming from. And also, my hat goes off to the police department because it is really a good department. And I'd like to see how the captain goes for at least a year here, 2 years before we make a structure change. So thank you, Mayor.
Anybody else? Any questions for the chief? None? Yeah, call. We got a motion and a second on the floor. Call for the question, Councilman Larson.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item D. Approve resolution 1345 amending salary structure for the city of Lander to add the police corporal position. And a motion and a second.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilman Cox.
Stu.
Stu, sorry. She hasn't been there so long. She's just in the corner of my eye. So, but I am glad you're back. You can see I'm really using your name. So on that note, in discussion. And gonna call for the question, Councilman Jehan.
No.
Yes. No.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, move to item E. Approve the authorized mayor to sign the Lander High Pressure Water System Upgrade Project Change Order number 2 between the city of Lander and High Country Construction, increase in a contract price of $35,081.94 for a total contract price of $9,532,882.44. That's for the water tank projects. Can get a motion in a second and we can have discussion.
So moved.
Second.
That motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman Cox. Got it right that time. Discussion. Lance?
Yes, Mayor and Council, these are just a couple items that were missed in that original design. There were lots of sheets here. One of them was this is a service line connection that we needed to make. We put this back through water development and this will be supported. The other service connections weren't, and that's why you see the red X's in the change order. And so we'll work on those at a different project. There's no benefit to doing those under contract at this time. So
Okay.
that's why this was pared down from the change order that got pulled at the last meeting to what you see in front of you today. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Council? None, got a motion in a second. I'm gonna call for the question. Councilman Larson?
Yes.
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 Yes. There's no items brought before the council. Move that we adjourn. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman White, Councilwoman Cox, second by Councilwoman White to
Nicely done.
adjourn. Call for the question, Councilman Jehan.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you all for coming. We didn't do bad. No.
Yeah.
Do you? Sorry. Well, me too.
I say the same thing when I go